Hi everyone, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology, and I'm here today bringing you another chart reading. And I'm excited about the chart reading I'm going to share with you today because it's one of my current favorite musicians, and his name is G-Eazy. He is a rapper from the Bay Area, and I recently took my nieces to see his concert in Denver, so he's been on my mind, and I really wanted to delve into his chart a bit because he's been having a lot of success the last several years, and I wanted to understand more about why that is from an astrological perspective. Also because in his latest album, The Beautiful and Damned, he references the fact that he's a Gemini and that he has these two different sides that he has to kind of battle with and find some sort of balance between. So I thought that was interesting that he's open-minded to the astrological understanding. So if you want to follow along, he was born on May 24th, 1989 in Oakland, California. I could not find a birth time, so we're working off of a solar chart. And as I said, he is a Gemini Sun at 3 degrees. And he has Mercury right next to his Sun at 2 degrees. Because of how closely Mercury and the Sun travel together in the sky, it's not uncommon for people to have Mercury and Sun conjunctions. I actually have one between my Sun and Mercury within a 3-degree orb. But it just means that the solar energy is blending or working with the communicative energy. And so a lot of people with Sun Mercury combinations are communicators through whatever form that takes. In his instance, it happens to be as a musician, as a rapper. And what else that's interesting to me that I was drawn to right away about his chart is that well, he most likely has a Capricorn moon. We don't know that for sure, but the moon was in Capricorn all day that he was born. And it really makes sense to me that he would have a Capricorn moon because this is a very driven person. And not only is his moon in Capricorn, but he's got Saturn conjunct Neptune in Capricorn, most likely near his moon. And his Saturn is at 13 degrees Capricorn, and his Neptune is at 11 degrees Capricorn. And I wanted to read something that I found because immediately I thought, well, that's his music, because Neptune is the imagination. It's often expressed through creative forms such as music or acting. And then Saturn has to do with this ability to ground and to focus and to manifest. So to have the two energies together really means that he is able to take that creative imagination and ground it and put it into a tangible form. And I found some more explanation of this on a website called Astro Matrix. And it talks about the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune and people who are born with that. And it says that this aspect occurs approximately once every 36 years. So it's pretty rare because that's the amount of time, 30 years is the amount of time that it takes Saturn to orbit the solar system. And because it moves faster than Neptune, it's going to, catch up to Neptune every roughly 36 years. And during the last century, it happened in 1917, 1952, and 1989, which was the year that G-Eazy was born. The effects of Saturn have a beneficial influence on the tendencies of Neptune, helping definition, stability, and ease of expression. The potential is for practical idealism and the ability for positive application of the ideas and the imagination emanating from Neptune. This is useful for creativity, as the inspiration of Neptune can be given adequate form and manifestation by the concrete tendencies of Saturn, and so the imagination is not left swirling in an inner world of dreams and fantasies, but is released onto the physical plane to be shared with others. And I just think that's such a perfect expression of part of his nature, because he has certainly done that with his music. that Saturn Neptune in Capricorn is opposed his Mars in Cancer at 15 degrees. So Mars in Cancer, and you hear it when he talks. Mars in Cancer, Mars, our self-assertive energy. In Cancer, the first water sign. It's the emotions, learning how to express themselves, but it's also this kind of very protective energy. It's very much grounded in its roots and where it's come from. And he's very much about like his loyalty to his mother and to his younger brother, and how much his mother shaped who he was growing up, and how important it is for him as his life unfolds in this sort of wild lifestyle of remembering his roots and remembering where he came from. And he's very connected still to his mother, and he sees that as a very grounding force in his life. You can also see just Mars in Mars in Cancer in his music. He's very emotional in the lyrics in his music. There's an intensity about it, and it's kind of just like, it's very much an expression of his feelings and how he's feeling about things. And also what's interesting is that Mars, and I'll get back to the opposition to the Saturn and Neptune in a moment, but his natal Mars at 15 Capricorn trines his Pluto at 13 Scorpio. So that brings another level of intensity to his drive and to his sort of ego expression. Pluto in Scorpio, that's in its home sign. And Pluto in Scorpio is a generational energy. But it is connected in this instance to a personal planet, which is his Mars. So you're going to get this element of his self-expression through that Martian principle, also having this Plutonian transformative energy, where he kind of goes into the depths of the subconscious, into those areas of ourselves that we keep hidden and we have difficulty facing, and allowing himself to kind of go through that process of the Phoenix rising, where he sort of flirts in that subversive area of life and shines a light on things that are taboo, not only to kind of help bring them to society, but also to personally help kind of in some ways exorcise his demons. And again, that energy, Pluto and Scorpio, is trined his Mars. So it just means that he's an intense guy, and he's he's very powerful. He's not really very afraid. Like he'll go there and he wants to find out what's there and uncover it and resurrect in some ways through a transformative process from what he sees and finds, in those deeper, darker recesses of who he is. So that's part of his Mars energy. And then again, that Mars opposes that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And with the Mars opposite the Saturn-Neptune in Capricorn, it can just mean this push-pull. Like I've heard him say it too with that Mars in Cancer. He finally bought a house for himself, and I think he bought one for his mom too, but it was like he was on the road for like 5 years touring. And to him, it was such a wonderful thing to get a house. And then he set up a studio in his house so that he could just stay at home and work. I mean, that is so Mars in Cancer. And then especially opposite the Saturn, Neptune, and Capricorn. But going back to that Saturn, Neptune, and Capricorn opposite the Mars in Cancer, it's like there's this push and pull. Like Mars in Cancer, it really does want to be home. Saturn and Neptune in Capricorn, that's more about, working and creating foundation and security and structure in the life. So with the opposition, there's just this kind of push and pull and needing to really find the balance, which it sounds like he really has worked hard to do that with this situation now, where he can basically just be at home and that satisfies that Mars and Cancer part of him, but then also do his music, which satisfies the Saturn Neptune part of him. Bottom line is, with everything I've talked about so far, this person is just a super hard worker. And when you hear him talk, he talks like this since he was like 13. He kind of knew that he wanted to get into the business, and you know, he went to college in New Orleans to study music production, and you know, he really didn't just like end up here by chance. I mean, a part of it is chance in the business, but a lot of it is his determination and hard work, and he certainly has that in his chart. The other thing that's interesting about his chart is that he's got a Venus conjunct Jupiter in Gemini. His Venus is at 16 and his Jupiter's at 14, and that is his luck. Jupiter is our lucky energy, and it's sitting next to Venus, which it deals with our ability to earn money. It deals with our creative expression. So, you know, whenever people have Jupiter and Venus in some kind of combination, you know, there's generally an element of luck there. There's also an element of kind of coming off as just an upbeat person. You know, people gravitate towards that. People like that. People want to give you things and give you chances, and you know, so that Venus Jupiter really helps him out, I would say, in his life. All right, so let's go to his transits, because he's just been having so much success, and there has been a lot of transits that have been going on in his life that lead to this type of success. So the first thing that I saw was that transiting Pluto was opposing his Mars. Now remember, his Mars is opposed his Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and his Mars is trine his Pluto. So whenever a transit happens to his Mars, it also sets off all that natal energy in his chart. And this happened this happened from March of 2015 to November of 2016. And this is when one of his albums, When It's Dark Out, was released. And it was actually recorded in 2014 to 2015. So during part of this transit of the Pluto opposite his Mars. But his real big #1 hit, the first top 10 hit, Me, Myself, and I, came out in October of 2015. Pretty much in the middle of this Pluto opposite Mars transit. Now, Pluto opposite Mars, I mean, I know that it probably exposed him to a lot of the darker side of the industry, or just the temptations of the industry and that kind of thing, because Pluto really takes you there. And then it was touching his Mars, which is his action energy, his self-assertion energy. So it probably sent him into a self-exploration, you know, as far as how he wants to assert himself, and you know, maybe creating some sort of transformative process around how he asserts himself in his life through the going to the deeper, darker places. But there's also a lot of power that you can harness during these Pluto-Mars times, as long as you don't, you know, use the energy improperly. If you can really focus it, which I know he can, with all that Capricorn in his chart and with the Mars trining the Pluto in his chart. So really, this Pluto opposite Mars probably gave him a lot of sustained energy, and just a lot of drive to succeed. Now, what also happened is that Neptune came around in April of 2017, and it's still there, trining his Pluto through December of 2018. So Neptune, you know, is this mystical energy. It's the imagination, but it's also our spirituality. And what I find interesting that I'm hearing from him now, because he's now touring again, I think it started in maybe December of 2017, and he's released his new album, which is called The Beautiful and Damned, and a lot of it is about this real kind of, in some ways, his struggle with his light and dark side, and with the hedonism in some ways of the music industry, and how to try and find and stay centered. And that's what Neptune really brings, is this desire to kind of transcend material, you know, pull and to really find some other type of connection to life through spirituality, through compassion, you know. And he really, so with Neptune trining his natal Pluto, it's probably bringing an element to him of being able to find some more peace through all of this, and some more centeredness. And you just kind of hear him talk about it in his interviews. He really seems like he's growing a lot, and that maybe he's moved through this kind of like, you know, wanting all these dreams and wanting all this recognition and wanting all this material wealth, and kind of finding that there's something more to life than that, and that he's on this kind of path of understanding that a little bit more within himself. And I would definitely say that that Neptune trine Pluto is part of that process that he's going through. So a few other things that are going on. He's had Neptune squaring his Jupiter, and that started in May of last year and continues till February of 2019. And Neptune, again, that creative principle, squaring Jupiter. Jupiter is the principle of expansion, and again, his Jupiter sits next to Venus. So it sets off that Jupiter-Venus conjunction whenever. And this is Neptune in Pisces squaring his Jupiter. You know, it could be expressed in a few different ways. It's definitely tapping in to his creative expression and bringing an element of heightened creativity to his creative expression. But also, again, with Jupiter, because Jupiter's our philosophies, Jupiter's is our, you know, perspective on life, our expanded perspective on life, and how we fit into a larger order of things. And so it could just be broadening his perspective and giving him a more compassionate perspective. So Robert Hand says, on the plus side, this transit stimulates your desires to help others, and you can be of great benefit if you deal with situations as they really are. Starry-eyed idealists are not very useful when there's much hard work to be done. And he does warn that this time can be, you know, a time where maybe we get a little bit too, he says your grasp of what you can and cannot do with your life is being tested now, and it's very important that you try to accept the limitations of your life. If you can, this transit will expand your life by helping you perceive the tremendous possibilities that are inherent in your situation, even though it isn't ideal. Your fantasies may take the form of an overdeveloped belief in your own strength and power. You may feel you cannot lose. Be particularly careful to avoid wild speculations and risks. You're more likely than usually gullible at this time, especially if someone flatters your sense of importance. So he's basically trying to say that it's a time where you really need to be careful not to go blindly into things, because Jupiter is optimism, and Neptune can sometimes be this energy of deception and fogginess and things not being very clear, you know. So it's important that you just take that precaution when you're under this kind of transit. Also, starting in May of this year and going through March of 2019 as well, he's going to be having Neptune squaring his Venus. And I find this to be interesting because right now he's in this fairly new relationship with a partner, and she's also in the music industry. Her name is Halsey. And, you know, they're sort of in those beginning stages of what a relationship is all about, and you're really starry-eyed and you're really into it. And although with Mars in Cancer, they can be very committed men, I just wonder what the Venus squared Neptune might bring. I'm personally under this transit myself in my life right now. And again, with Neptune creating that fogginess, and it also wants to self-sacrifice, and it's related to our loving energy, because that's what Venus is all about. Venus is about our pleasures, what we find pleasurable, and what, you know, it's the female principle of pleasure. So it's what we like, it's our tastes, you know, and sometimes with these Neptune squaring Venus energies, we can almost martyr ourselves, you know, we can become too self-sacrificing, and we lose track of what it is we really desire from that Venusian principle. and it can be hard. We can kind of sometimes feel like we're in this like fog of confusion and we don't know what we want. It requires us to kind of really be honest and truthful about what we feel, and not succumb to just avoiding or to staying in some sort of confused state because we don't want to, make any solid decisions. He's also having transiting Neptune trining his Mars, and that's from April of 2018 to March of 2019 as well. And this is just going to bring more creativity to him. With Neptune trining the Mars, it's going to soften his Martian expression even more. It's going to bring more of a spiritual perspective into his life, a compassionate perspective into his life. So in general, it's just a really, nice energy to experience. He is going to have Saturn return happening in January of 2019. That's a little bit ways away, but that's when he'll be getting close to the age of 30, when everybody experiences their Saturn return. And Saturn returns are often a time of sort of, shedding and letting go and eliminating things that are no longer working for us in our lives. So it'll be interesting to see what that brings for him. It's really, the return of Saturn is about aligning us more truthfully with what it is we want in life. That's what the elimination and letting go is all about. So ultimately, it is a good thing. It gets a bad rap, but it's a positive thing ultimately if we can stay open to the process. And he's also having Jupiter conjuncting his Pluto since December of 2017 through August of 2018. And Jupiter actually is going to go stationary direct in July of this year, exactly on his Pluto. And again, that Pluto's in the Capricorn, it trines his Mars, and I haven't mentioned yet, but it sextiles that Saturn-Neptune conjunction in his chart. So it's nicely sextiled and trined in his chart. And Jupiter, expansion, Pluto, intensity and transformation, and the ability to focus our power. So, just another really positive symbol, not only for personal transformation in his life, but also, to really harness his own personal power and use it to create and really succeed at doing it with the Jupiter energy there. And finally, he's going to have Mars on his Neptune, Saturn, and perhaps his moon in March this month. And that will just be bringing a lot of energy to have Mars on the Neptune, Mars on the Saturn. That'll really be stimulating those energies in his chart and just bringing energy. Mars is a pretty quick moving planet, so it's not an extremely significant transit, but just a lot of energy going on in relation to his creative expression. And the last thing I want to mention is that he has progressed Sun moving into Cancer this year. So again, he is a Gemini, but now his Sun has moved into a new sign for the first time by progression. So this is going to change him because, Gemini is like an air energy. It's, into thinking and communicating and going here and going there, like the butterfly of the zodiac. But Cancer is like the home, the family, it's water, it's emotion, it's feeling. So it's really, he's progressing into a new expression of his solar energy at this time. And it's just going to be interesting to continue to see how it perhaps will change who he is, as many of these larger transits have been doing. And, he may decide he wants to, settle down a little bit more. I did hear him say he doesn't see himself ever having kids, but, when your Sun progresses into Cancer, it's like you shift, you're how you want to shine out into the world, your solar expression changes and you become a different energy to a certain extent. And so, it's just going to be interesting to see how it will affect who he becomes at this time in his life. So this concludes my reading of G-Eazy chart. Thank you so much for watching. If you like my channel, please subscribe. Also, I do offer readings. You can reach me at info@highaltitudeastrology.com. Thanks so much for watching. Adios.